Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Dati Civic and Peace Education Audio-Visual Series, Episode 9. This is your presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomungalode Baba, Sr. Welcome to this edition. Today, our focus is on the executive branch of the Liberian government. In the last episode, we discussed the legislative branch of government of Liberia. And during that time, we discussed the role of the legislature in the day-to-day functioning of the Liberian government with respect to making laws in the land. Today, we're going to be focusing on what is done when the laws are passed in the national legislature. When laws are passed in the national legislature, they are not just there, as a museum piece or a museum artifact. Instead, when laws are passed, they are written so that they can be enforced. And the branch of government in Liberia that enforces the law is the executive branch. So today, our focus is on the executive branch. Welcome to this very interesting conversation, and we hope that you will learn a lot from it. The executive branch of government is responsible to enforce the laws of the land, to oversee the day-to-day operations of the state, and to defend and protect the Constitution, human lives, and properties within the territorial confines of the Republic of Liberia. The president is the chief executive of the nation. He enjoys exclusive powers to appoint members of his cabinet, chief and associate justices of the Supreme Court, and judges of lower courts, county superintendents and commissioners, etc. He also serves as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Liberia and as Chief Spokesperson of the Republic of Liberia. The president also has the power to pardon and to veto bills passed by the national legislature that are placed on his desk. He also has the power to declare a state of emergency and to declare war in defense of the nation with the advice and consent of the joint session of both houses of the Liberian legislature. The executive branch also includes the vice president of Liberia, who serves as president of the Liberian Senate. He is next in command and may take over as president in the event when the president is unable or unhealthy to perform his presidential duties and or in the event of death or impeachment. Like the other two branches of the Liberian government, the executive branch is also subject to the checks and balances system, and the president of Liberia is not above the law. He takes oath to defend and protect the Constitution, the lives and properties of the people of Liberia and foreign residents living within the territorial confines of the Republic of Liberia. So there are several things that we've just said in our introduction regarding the executive branch of government. In the previous episode, we explained to you that the legislative branch of government makes the laws. That's all they do. They don't execute the law and they don't interpret the law. But the executive branch is the branch that is responsible to execute the laws, to enforce the laws in the land. And the person who is the chief law enforcement officer is the president of the country. So if there are certain laws in the country that are not being enforced, then it's not the responsibility of the legislative branch to do so and or the judicial branch to do so, but it's the executive branch. So therefore, if a law is not enforced in the country, then that fault falls on the executive branch. It falls on the president, the chief executive of the nation. That's his responsibility. Everybody has his or her own responsibility. The executive branch enforces the law, the legislative branch makes the law, and the judicial branch interprets the law. So if we're talking about enforcing the law, then it's the president. And then also, we have also mentioned that the president is not above the law. And the reason why he's not above the law is because in a civilized society, in a modern nation state, a modern nation state is governed by the principles of rule of law. And what that expression means is that no one is above the law. And so in this particular case, especially in the democratic Republican form of government, no one is above the law, not even the president. So this is very important for you to understand. So if the president, who is head of the nation, is not above the law, that means that you and myself are not above the law either. And then also there are responsibilities apart from enforcing the laws, that the president has the power to appoint members of his cabinet. That's an exclusive power that he has. No one can question him and say, why did you appoint this person? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Etc. You know, he has that choice. It's his prerogative to appoint whomever he wants to appoint to serve his government. But however, when he appoints people, those people must go to the Senate to be confirmed. And so there again, that's the rule of law procedure, and also the fact that each branch has its own responsibility. And as we said before, when we discussed the issue about the legislative branch, we told you that the Senate was responsible for confirming, you know, individuals who were appointed by the chief executive. So that is why the president, when he appoints an official of government, especially members of his cabinet, they must be subjected to the confirmation hearing, whereby they go to explain to the lawmakers what they are capable of doing and what they will be able to do, you know, during the tenure of their service with the country. Then also we said that the president is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia. So, you know, you cannot have the president not being commander-in-chief of the army in the country, you know, or to have somebody else be the head of the army in the country will definitely, you know, kind of create political tension and insecurity. So the president, since he's the head of the country, he's responsible for the overall safety and well-being, permanency, and well-being of all the citizens of the country. So he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia. He can declare war against a country, and or when a country another country attempts to invade Liberia, he can also ready the army and the people of Liberia to face, the invading country or the opponents of the nation. But then again, before that is done, he must, get the consent, the advice and consent of the joint session of the legislature. Both the House of Representatives and the House of Senate must meet and discuss with the president, and 2/3 majority that would agree on the proposal put before the president before it's required. It requires 2/3 majority in order for the request of an emergency situation for the request to be granted. So again, all these are done so that there are checks and balances to make sure that the leader of the country does not, of his own or on his own, make a major decision that's going to affect the lives and properties of people, the citizens, without the consent of those who were elected by the people to represent them in case of gathering to discuss issues that affect the nation. So we want to go forward to explain something about state of emergency. What is the state of emergency? What do we mean by state of emergency? We want to discuss that now. The president also has the power to declare a state of emergency in time of civil unrests, natural disasters, or invasion of Liberia by another nation or rebel group attempting to destabilize Liberia. The state of emergency provides unlimited powers, which may be very detrimental for a nation and people when that unlimited power is thrust in the hands of a power-greedy individual or group of people whose intent for the use of emergency powers may not be in the interest of the people, but in their own selfish benefit and interest. So the state of emergency, when there's you don't just declare a state of emergency in a country because you want to. There has to be a certain kind of conditions, that may occur before you can do so. And some examples that we're giving include something like a natural disaster, like a flood, where houses, are washed away. Some people even get killed, and there's a need, to move speedily to rescue people and save them, to evacuate them, to provide shelter for them, and all of that. But that may not be in the budget because you didn't plan for it. You didn't know that a disaster will happen, but then it just happened. So that's a state of emergency. And in that case, the president will, consult with the lawmakers to get their consent and advice so that they can, locate resources to serve that particular need, to make sure that those resources, that particular state of emergency, is regularized to a peaceful and convenient, situation. So, but during that time, the state of emergency, unlimited power is given to the president so that he can be able to get whatever he needs quickly and to mobilize people very quickly and efficiently so that whatever needs to be addressed may be addressed appropriately and in a timely manner. So the state of emergency provides unlimited powers, which may be very detrimental for a nation and people when that quote unquote unlimited power is thrust in the hands of a power-greedy individual or group of people whose intent for the use of emergency powers may not be in the interest of the people, but in their own selfish benefit and interest. However, When used appropriately, a state of emergency may enable the president to make resources immediately available to rescue, evacuate, shelter, provide essential commodities, and quell disturbances in affected localities. So you can see that, like for instance, April 14, 1978, I think it was 1978, April 14, we saw that the rice riots, we saw that, the riot was so bad that people were going around destroying stores, destroying people's properties and all of that. And during that time, President Tolbert, declared a state of emergency. And during that time, curfew was imposed. People were advised not to go out, on the streets, unless the curfew was lifted, etc. So that was a state of emergency, and that was because there was a civil unrest. So again, just want to specify the state of emergency does not just occur on its own. There must be some kind of, disturbance or some kind of a safety issue, involved that may warrant the president to request a state of or to declare a state of emergency in the country. It may position the state of emergency may also position the national government to seek timely international assistance when the scope of the emergency event exceeds the state's resources. So something like COVID, for instance, where all of a sudden people didn't expect that COVID would happen, but then there was this worldwide pandemic, and so in that case, the Liberian government did not have the resources, and that at that time declaring a state of emergency kind of provided some leadway for the government to appeal to international partners, to assist us with medical equipment and supplies and whatever the government needed to address that particular issue. For an example, a state of emergency was declared by the Dole government during the 1985 failed coup and the rebel incursion in 1989. However, note that the president does not have the exclusive power to act alone in declaring a state of emergency. To declare a state of emergency, he must call for the convening of a joint session of the national legislature. To declare a state of emergency, the president must call for the convening of a joint session of the national legislature, not just only the Senate or only the House of Representatives, but both houses must assemble to hear what he has to say regarding the state of emergency. And 2/3 of the group gathered must agree upon his request before a legal state of emergency can be declared in the country. The main purpose for this request for the president to the national legislature is to consult with the representatives of the people of Liberia in whom power is vested. Also, majority of lawmakers must give their approval before the state of emergency can take full effect. For instance, if the president does not receive the consent of most of the joint session of the Liberian legislature, he cannot declare a state of emergency. The reason for this is because during a state of emergency, the Constitution is suspended and martial law is applied in place of civil law. So during the regular time period, like now in Liberia, we are being ruled under civil law, CIVIL, civil law, not martial law. But because civil law protects our civil rights and freedoms, such as freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of censure, freedom of religion. All those things there are protected under civil law. But when martial law is imposed, you don't have that freedom anymore. You don't have that freedom to worship the place you want to go to worship, and or you don't have that freedom to assemble. You don't have that freedom to choose what you want, like the way you do during the civilian rule. You don't. It doesn't happen when you are under martial rule or military rule. It does not happen so. So in the process of declaring a state of emergency, that's one of the things that can happen. The Constitution, which protects, our civil liberties, can be suspended. And when it's suspended, then you don't have those freedoms anymore. So that's why it's not a fun thing to declare a state of emergency at any time that anybody wants to. Some of our what's that? So we're talking about during a state of emergency, the Constitution is suspended and martial law is applied in place of civil law. Martial law replaces civilian rule with military rule. That sometimes the president will not, the state of emergency, during a state of emergency, he will not necessarily wear soldier clothes or, army clothes or army regalia, all of that. But the way how he's going to govern you now is going to be completely different. It's not going to be where when he talks, you talk, or where if you're not pleased, you can get up and express yourself and all of that. You don't have that freedom to do that. When you do so, you can be, held, accountable. You can be reprimanded. You can be imprisoned. Sometimes you can get killed. All of that. So that's why it's very important for us to guide our Constitution and to make sure that it is in full force, so that we don't lose the freedoms that we enjoy on a civil rule. So that's what military rule does. It wipes away basic human freedoms and dignity of the human person, and it does not guarantee due process. So what it does, it wipes away basic human freedoms and dignity of the human person, and it does not guarantee due process. Now, what do we mean by due process? Due process is an expression that refers to the choice or the opportunity that we have, that if you are accused of any crime, that you are not, quote unquote, guilty because someone accused you of stealing or committing a crime, but you're not guilty until you can go before the court of competent jurisdiction to defend yourself before the law. And if the law is interpreted, or what you did is interpreted as with evidence, if it's interpreted with evidence that you did commit the crime, and before you can be found guilty. But no one is guilty unless he has that chance to go before the law to defend himself. And that process that you do is what they call due process. So martial law wipes away basic human freedoms and dignity of the human person, and it does not guarantee due process. But on the contrary, civil law guarantees the civil rights and liberties of the citizens of Liberia. Some of our civil rights and liberties that are suspended during a state of emergency or martial law include what are not limited to freedoms of speech, freedom of movement, assembly, censure, access to due process, etc. All of these freedoms and human rights are protected under the Constitution of Liberia, but they are stripped of you when the president of Liberia declares a state of emergency. During that time, He exercises absolute powers. Absolute powers. Simply put in Liberian parlance, state of emergency or martial law is equivalent to the no-code expression, you go or you not go. You know, back in those days, I was born in the barracks and I grew up among army people. And when the commander sent an MP to go and arrest someone and the person is hesitating, you know, the soldier will say, my friend, you go or you not go. And it's left with you. If you say you now go, then you know what's coming next. You know, they will jack you up, you know, and take your behind through the MP quarter or wherever you're supposed to go. You're supposed to report yourself. And or, for lack of a better expression, comme la Jimmy gone, you know, Jimmy English. That was another expression too. So sometimes, you know, if you're there standing up and arguing with the soldier, the MP, you know, the military police, you know, he will tell you, say, look, my friend, all that people where you they talking, I don't know him. Come on, Jimmy gone, you know, Jimmy English. So that means he does not want to argue with you, to go back and forth with you like you would do in a civilian, you know, a civil law situation where, you know, you have your right, you know, to ask questions, to ask the person, why am I being, you know, arrested? Why am I being searched? Why is my home being searched? Where's the search warrant? You know, did the judge sign it? All those things that is civil liberty, civil rights stuff, you know, they fall in the civil rule, you know, category, but not in the martial rule. In the martial rule is completely different. And that's not something that you want to happen in Liberia, and or that's not something you want your leader to kind of grab power by force or whatever it is. So that's why it's important for us to obey the law and to also respect the Constitution, so that our liberties, you know, can be protected and safeguarded. For an example, if a government declares a state of emergency in an area, it introduces special measures such as increased powers for the police or army so that they may have enough room to enforce the law. Don't forget, now all these things about enforcing the law, but there are different ways to enforce the law. You can enforce the law through the civilian, you know, rule or civil law, or you can enforce the law through martial law, martial rule, you know. So that's what we're saying. So we're saying, for instance, if a government declares a state of emergency in an area, it introduces special measures such as increased powers for the police or army so that they may have enough room to enforce the law, such as imposing a dusk to dawn curfew when the movement of the citizens is restricted. So dusk to dawn curfew, they say from 5 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening to 5 o'clock in the morning, nobody should go out. You can only do that during the martial rule time, not during the civil rule time. To civil rule time, you can stay out as long as you want, as long as you are not a threat to society, you're not committing any crime, you know, or you can go out and hang out, go to the bar, go do this and go do that. But when that is imposed, you know, then you cannot go to the club, you cannot move around, you cannot do anything. 5 o'clock, you must be in. If you're caught outside, you know, after the stipulated time for the curfew, definitely then you have breached martial law, and they can do anything they want to do with you. You know, in most cases, you know, sometimes it can be very, very, you know, deadly. So that's also important for you to understand. So any violation against the imposed curfew may result in drastic punitive measures ranging from imprisonment without due process or even death with no questions asked. Further, under this condition, nobody can question the authority of the president and or to defend you in a court of law, because martial law does not guarantee civil protection during the period of emergency. And martial law also is different from civil law. Martial law, you know, the way how civil law would say, oh, well, you committed so and so crime, which is punishable by, you know, 5 years imprisonment. This and their own is like death squad, this, that, blah, 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 and all of that. So that's like the way it happened during the PRC time. That was martial rule. And during martial rule, they take you to the what's that, military justice, you know, type of thing, which is completely different, you know. Therefore, a state of emergency must not be imposed at the whims or caprices of the president, unless the lives of the citizens and their properties are in imminent danger due to civil unrest or natural disaster, that the government may need some additional authority and resources to contain. Also, a state of emergency may be required to address civil unrest, because civil law prohibits the suspension of the Constitution, in which the freedoms of the citizens, such as freedoms of movement, speech, and censure, are protected. So those are some of the things when it comes to a state of emergency. And we're explaining this also to let you know those are some of the powers that the president has, to enable him to adequately execute or enforce the law in instances when things are out of control, that you cannot understand them. You cannot bear with them now, and all of that. So that's why it's important for us to understand that particular situation with respect to what's that, the state of emergency situation in the country. Then also, let's continue with Spider-Man for a minute. Let me get this situation under control. So then we come to the qualifications and terms of office of the Liberian presidency. In the beginning of the First Republic, Liberian presidents were elected for a 2-year term of office. The first president of Liberia was Joseph Jenkins Roberts, and the current president of Liberia is His Excellency George Manning Weah. Over a century and a half, the presidential term of office of Liberia changed from 2 years to 4 years, and now it is 6 years. Unlike members of the legislature that may be re-elected for an unlimited 6 or 9 year terms, if they are in good standing, the Constitution of Liberia only allows for 2 terms of office, a maximum of 12 years for the president. Currently, no president can serve 3 terms based on the constitutional provision. So it's also important for us to understand this aspect of, the executive branch of government. Unlike the legislative branch of government, where members of the House of Representatives are elected for a 6-year term, and also can be re-elected over and over if the people feel that this representative is really serving their interest, their best interest, and or a senator who may serve 9-year term, uh, unlimited nine-year term based on his health, his ability to deliver, the services to his people. That's not the case with the executive branch, with the presidency. With the presidency, the Constitution prohibits anyone who is president of Liberia to go for a third term. So you are only entitled, the president is only entitled to two 6-year term, 2 6-year terms. After those 2 terms, which is a maximum of 12 years, then you can no longer run to be president. Now, this aspect is very important because there are individuals out there who have the tendency, to misinform the people of Liberia. Oh, this person is so good, or he will go for third and fourth terms. You cannot make that kind of expression publicly because you are confusing the citizens of Liberia, because that is not what the Constitution says. And when you do that, it's illegal, and it has the tendency to create this instability in the country, to destabilize the country, because you are sending out the wrong information to the people to make them feel that they can elect someone or president for 3 terms or for 4 terms, when that is not what is in the Constitution of the country. So my advice to people who are so diehard partisans and all of that, please, calm down. Please speak the truth. Don't confuse our people simply because they are uneducated. Let them know that the Constitution only provides for 2 6-year terms for anyone who is president of the Republic of Liberia. And I think that any government, any sitting president also should be very fair, very patriotic, to explain to their fans and supporters and say, look, I admire the fact that you want me to go 3 full terms of office and all of that, but that's not part of our Constitution. And you should not be confusing our people simply because we have a high illiteracy rate in Liberia. It's only but fair for the leader of the country to make that clear to the people, and also to make it clear that in order for the 2 terms of office for that particular segment of the Constitution to be changed, there must be a referendum. There must be a national referendum to hear from the people whether they want to have one person ruling them for more than 12 years. And so far, the longest serving Liberian president was William V.S. Tubman. He ruled Liberia for 27 unbroken years, from 1944 to 1971. He was succeeded by his vice president of 19 years, His Excellency William R. Tolbert Jr., to vie for the presidency. For William Tolbert Jr. To vie for the presidency, one must be a natural-born citizen of Liberia per Article 27B of the Constitution, and citizenship is limited to persons who are Negroes or of Negro descent, and a presidential candidate must own real property valued at $25,000 and must have resided in Liberia for at least 10 years. That's part of the Constitution. Those are some of the qualifications and term of office of the Liberian presidency. One, that the president can only serve 2 6-year terms, a maximum of 12 years. That whoever wants to become president must at least be 35 years old. That they must have a real estate valued at $25,000. um, and that only people, black people, people of color, Negroes or descendants of Negroes can serve as president of Liberia. And also that you must reside in Liberia for at least 10 years, to run for the presidency. Functions of the executive branch of the Liberian government. So what are some of the functions of the executive branch? We know overall that the executive branch is responsible to execute the law, to enforce the law. But there are so many branches of the government, the executive branch has so many subdivisions that carry out different forms of enforcing the law, like the police, the police, the national police, they do the civilian aspect of enforcing the law. The military do the other aspect, with Department of Defense, they do a different job of enforcing the law. The Department of Justice does its job. The Department of, Ministry of Finance, they handle the financial aspect of the country. So there are so many branches, subdivisions of the executive branch. But all of these different branches, their role is to enforce some sort of law that deals with money, that deals with defense, that deals with health, that deals with transportation, etc. So we talk about the functions of the executive branch of the Liberian government. The responsibilities of the executive branch of the Liberian government are many. It coordinates the overall activities of all three branches in accordance with the principles of checks and balances. So even though we're saying that the executive branch is just there to enforce the law and all of that, but in enforcing the law, the executive branch, the chief executive, is head of the country. So those other branches, the legislative branch and the judicial branch, they are also part of the government, or the head of the government is the president. So there are things that go on in the legislative branch that the president needs to know about, and there are things that go on in the judicial branch that he also needs to know about. But how he coordinates that, there's a little caveat. There's a little rule there that says that he cannot overdo his oversight responsibilities. He can only stop, go, but just a few miles and stop. But he cannot go there to make a law. He cannot make a law, and he cannot interpret the law. But he can coordinate with those people who are making the laws and interpreting the laws to make sure that the entire country is safe. So let me explain that again so that we'll understand. So the responsibilities of the executive branch of the Liberian government are many. It coordinates the overall activities of all three branches in accordance with the principles of checks and balances. So it's the checks and balances thing that I'm talking about. That's where the break comes in. He can go so far, but no further. For example, the vice president is a member of the executive branch, but he serves as president of the Senate. As you know, the Senate is one of the houses of the legislature. It's the upper house, but the vice president, even though he's a member of the executive branch, but he presides over the Senate. He presides over the Senate so that he can also, be an eye of the president, in the legislature, to make sure that there's proper coordination between the office of the president, the executive, and the legislature. So the vice president is member of the executive branch, but he serves as president of the Senate. He presides over the sessions of the Senate. Though he may not be involved in the day-to-day activities of the lawmaking process, like a real lawmaker would, like a senator would, or like a representative would. Yet the vice president has the power to vote to break a tie when passing a law. So in the House Assembly, if we're going to pass a major legislation, but those who are voting, there is an even number. You got 5% for and 5% against. Then the vice president will cast his vote in favor of the side that he feels will be in the best interest of the administration of the executive. So that's what he's there for, to do that piece of work. But he's not there to dictate to the lawmakers what to do, what to say, and all of that. That will be against the principles of the checks and balances. So the vice president does not have that power to do that. Okay, so he presides for the sessions of the Senate, and though he may not be involved in the day-to-day activities of the lawmaking process, yet he has the power to vote to break a tie when passing a law. This gives the presidency some leverage to ensure that it participates in the making of laws that it is responsible to enforce. However, this does not mean the vice president or the president has any powers to dictate to lawmakers how to do their work as legislators. The president also appoints the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of Liberia and judges of lower courts. So now we're going to the judicial branch, and the president's tentacles also extend to the judicial branch. He can also, he also oversees certain things with respect to appointing. He can just appoint the judges and things to work in that government, to interpret the law, to advise the executive with respect to how the law should be interpreted so that there will be peace and justice in the country. But the branch of the executive, the subdivision of the executive branch that would, really work hand in hand with the judicial branch would be the Justice Ministry. So that's what the Justice Ministry is there for, because the government will act, the executive branch will act through its Justice Ministry, not through the judicial branch. That's where the checks and balances comes in. So if they want any kind of an interpretation of the law, the person that will help the executive branch to interpret the law will be the Justice Ministry, the Attorney General of the Republic of Liberia. He will be the chief lawyer to be there to interpret the law and stuff, but he's not a member of the judicial branch, because the judicial branch is independent. They have that independent power that the Justice Ministry cannot force them to make a decision in favor of the executive branch simply because they represent the president. All of that, that cannot happen and should not happen, because the Chief Justice, the Associate Justices, the judges, even though they are appointed by the president, but the president does not have power in how they run they do their jobs, and also how they interpret the law. They have that independence to interpret the law based on the law, based on the Constitution of Liberia. So, of course, the president does not have the authority to interpret the law and or to instruct the Chief Justice, the Associate Justices, and judges how to interpret the law and or to render judgment in favor of whomever the president favors in a legal battle. Both the legislature and the judiciary are independent branches of government working together with the executive branch for the common good of the people of Liberia. But there are separation of powers among them, and no one branch has the constitutional mandate to perform the task of the other branches. This arrangement is to ensure that no one branch is more powerful than the other two branches of the Liberian government. So I hope you understood that. I mean, you understand what I just said. Okay, the president has the authority to appoint members of his cabinet. So the appointment of cabinet ministers and deputy assistant ministers, directors of public corporations, commissioners of agencies, and all of that. He has exclusive rights to appoint whomever he wants to appoint. The judiciary branch cannot question him. The legislative branch, the role that they got to do there is for them to confirm the appointment or not confirm the appointment. If the legislative branch said, if the Senate, and it's the Senate that does that, if the Senate approves, the Senate must approve the appointment of an appointee. The president's appointee must be approved by the Senate before that person can, receive the gavel, official gavel, to function in the capacity in which the president wants him or her to perform, to participate. So again, you see the checks and balances and all of that. Because when the person becomes a minister of finance, a minister of health, a minister of transportation, whatever the position is, that person automatically becomes a national figure. He has the power to interpret, not to interpret, but to enforce the laws of the wing of government that he has now been appointed to head, so that law will be properly enforced. But in order for that person to get that power, they must be approved by the Senate, 2/3. Okay, so these branches, though there are separation of powers, but these branches work, with the president to assist him execute the laws of the land. Cabinet members are appointed by the president, but they must be confirmed by the House or Senate before they can gain legal authority to spearhead any government agency in Liberia. Each government ministry or agency carries out a specific function regarding the daily affairs of the state, and they report directly to the president on a daily basis to make sure he is aware of what they are doing in the enforcement of the laws of Liberia with respect to the individual, ministries or agencies that they had. For an example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs addresses matters of bilateral and multilateral relations between Liberia and other nations of the world with whom Liberia has diplomatic ties or does business. It is responsible to deploy Liberian diplomats abroad to seek the interests of Liberia and its citizens and to promote a good image of Liberia within the international community. The Justice Ministry is the wing of government that executes the laws of the land to ensure the safety, permanency, and well-being of all Liberians in accordance with the laws and statutes of Liberia. Hence, based on the distinct responsibilities of each government entity, it is very easy to determine which agency of government is not performing its constitutional mandate as per their assigned duties and responsibilities. Nevertheless, since these positions are not elected posts, the president has the exclusive power and right to appoint and dismiss any member of his cabinet at his will and pleasure. So at any time, the president can dismiss any of his ministers or directors, without any questions asked. That's part of his powers as president. So you see, the presidency is a very powerful position, but yet there are also checks and balances to make sure that that very powerful person does not misuse his power to the detriment of the nation and its people. So let's talk about the checks and balances with respect to the executive branch of government. As a democratic republic, the president of Liberia is not above the law. He is subject to conform to the checks and balances system like anybody else. The legislature and the judiciary as independent but equal branches of the government can exercise their right to agree or disagree publicly if the lawmakers or judges believe the president has violated any portion of the Constitution of Liberia. And that happened before or in 1929 with President King. He and Allen Yancey, when they did the Faneuil Pool crisis, during the Faneuil Pool crisis, when they felt that they were kind of, infringing upon the rights, constitutional rights of Liberians, through forced labor and sending them to Faneuil Pool to go and work there. And after the investigation by the League of Nations, they found that there were indeed, violations, human rights violations. And so the lower house, the House of Representatives, formulated the impeachment, document that and the president and his vice president had to resign because they had proof to show that there were some abuse of power, during the King and Yancey administration. So again, these things can happen. So that's why I'm explaining the checks and balances with respect to the executive branch of government, because you need to know that nobody is above the law, because we are living in a society where rule of law must prevail through the observance of the Constitution of the land. So as a democratic republic, the president of Liberia is not above the law. He is subject to conform to the checks and balances system. The legislature and the judiciary as independent but equal branches of the government can exercise the right to agree or disagree publicly if the lawmakers or judges believe the president has violated any portion of the Constitution of Liberia. So the Chief Justice can also stand and say, excuse me, Mr. President, based on Article this, Section this, 7, 9, 10, whatever it is, what you are, proposing is counterproductive and is not in accordance with the Constitution of Liberia. And that's what, real statesmen and women, in authority should be brave enough to do, so that we have the checks and balances, in its proper perspective for the safety and well-being of everyone. So for instance, for an example, depending on the gravity of the offense that the president may have committed, such as treason, bribery, or high crimes or misdemeanors, the lower house, it starts from the lower house, not from the Senate. The lower house or the House of Representatives is charged with the power by the Constitution of Liberia to investigate. They must be the ones to investigate. So all those people who are in the lower house, the House of Representatives, they have a serious job to do, in the best interest of the people that they represent, that they serve, the Liberian people that gave them the power to be there. Unfortunately, we don't see much of that from them, but you see that they kind of connive in most instances with the executive branch, which of course, violates the checks and balances system. So, but in the case of King and Yancey, the lower house, which is charged with the power by the Constitution to investigated that case. And when they found out that they had enough proof, then they sent it to the Senate. So now listen to the procedure, how this can be done when the president violates any portion of the Constitution. The first thing is that the lower house or House of Representatives is charged with the power by the Constitution of Liberia to investigate and, if necessary, impeach a sitting president by charging him with committing any of the crimes aforementioned. One of the crimes that I talked about, whether it's treason, whether it's misdemeanor, whether it's bribery, whatever. However, please note that an impeachment, when they say impeachment, it doesn't mean that, when they say, oh, the lower house impeached the president, it doesn't mean that the president automatically steps down. No, that in the impeachment document, it will be the charges. So an impeachment is a charge of a wrongdoing, but it does not mean conviction of wrongdoing. So you can be impeached. You can prepare an impeachment document to say, oh, you did so and so, to this and that. Now, as I told you before, in civilian rule, there must always, and any individual who is accused of any crime is not guilty unless he has access to due process. So if you prepare the impeachment document to charge the president of any wrongdoing, it does not mean that he's automatically convicted of that wrongdoing you're accusing him of. Now, what it means is that in this life, the president is not guilty, but he is therefore entitled, to due process and to defend himself in accordance with the law. So once the House of Representatives votes and passes articles of impeachment against the president is then entitled to a trial. So when we prepare the articles of impeachment where they're charging the president, that article of impeachment does not mean that the president is automatically convicted of what they're charging him of, but it's an article of impeachment. And after they do that, the president is entitled to a trial. So once the president is impeached, because the 2/3 of the House will say, yes, we agree, this is what we're going to send forward to the Senate, for him to be tried. Then once he's impeached, the accused president is tried by the full Senate. All members of the Senate, the Senate has 30 members in the Senate, 2 senators per county. So those 30 members, say for instance, if the 30 members went to have the full Senate, the vice president will be there, but also during the investigation or in the full Senate, it's not the vice president that presides, because there will be conflict of interest for the vice president to preside, because the vice president is a member of the executive branch. So he is not the one to interpret whatever charges are being taken against the president, but rather it will be the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice presides over that kind of case. The Chief Justice is the one that presides over a case where the president is being tried in the full Senate, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And then if he is convicted, because the Chief Justice is the one who interprets the law, the vice president is a member of the executive branch. He's just only there to execute laws, not there to interpret the law. So he cannot act, he could not or cannot act, preside over a case or trial. Only a judge can preside over a trial, because the judge is a member of the judicial branch of government. So that we'll talk about the 3 separate but equal branches. So now they're going to be doing their jobs like that. So the Chief Justice presides over that trial. And if he feels that the president is guilty, once he is guilty, he must be convicted by 2/3 majority. So when the 2/3 majority say that he's guilty, then the next thing is that he will have to step down, and the vice president will take oath. So the president over the vice president, the president is then removed from office. In this case, the vice president becomes president after taking oath. Other than that, the president, as an elected official, remains in office for the duration of his presidential term of office. So if a president does not fall in any problem with the people and does not have to be questioned by the legislators and or the judicial branch, judiciary or whatever it is, then he's entitled to serve his full term, the full term, which is 6 years. And after 6 years, if he's wants to run again, he can run for a second term. But at the end of that second term, he cannot run. he cannot run unless there is a change in the constitution, which cannot be done by the lawmaker sitting there, but it has to be a national referendum. So please, once again, stop misleading the people of Liberia, start confusing them to say that, oh, whoever you think is president will be president for the third term and the fourth term and all of that, without explaining what the law says and requires in order for that to be done, for that change to take place in the Constitution. So if he doesn't fall into any problem, he cannot be removed from office because of jealousy or hatred or anything outside of the confines of the Constitution of Liberia. Sometimes, there's so much hatred in the Liberian society. The society is so polarized. Sometimes some of the accusations that people make against the president, they're not founded. They don't have evidence to prove, but it's just a matter of jealousy, and people think that they can work their way up to the presidency by being hateful and all of that. But no, that's not the right process to take. You must be very, very sincere and just how you want justice. That's how you should also offer justice, and peace, reconciliation, and respect to the sitting president and those who are in power, unless if you have any proof, and you want to take up, a legal step against the president. Of course, you can do that because, as I said, nobody is above the law, and not even the president of the country. But you must go through the legal procedure to do that. And most times, sometimes people don't want to do that. They go the wrong way, try to create, instability and all those kinds of things. They are criminal acts. That's not a legal process. That's not how you remove a sitting president or any leader, or in an illegal manner. No, you must follow the procedure based that are, enshrined in the Constitution. So this is the reason civic education is important, to give citizens a clear idea of their civic responsibilities and duties as enshrined in the Constitution of Liberia. Possessing this knowledge may help Liberians learn about the legal process peaceful and law-abiding citizens must take to get redress. Staging coup d'etat and imposing martial law or attempting to overthrow a duly elected government is unconstitutional. And I just want to advise everybody to understand that in a civilized society, we must follow the rule of law. The president of Liberia and his obligation to the Liberian people. Now, this is very important because, in Liberia, when somebody becomes president, his supporters, well, most of the time, the supporters have a tendency to vilify those who oppose, their candidate. So I want you to please listen to this aspect of this lesson for today. The president of Liberia is obligation to the Liberian people. When someone is elected president of Liberia, he does not only become president of the political party that fielded him. Instead, he becomes president of all Liberians, including members of the opposition and those who did not support his candidacy. Also, during and after elections are held, political tensions may mount among political rivals. In this light, it is the constitutional duty of the president-elect or president to ensure peace and calm is restored. His duty is to assure all Liberians that he is their leader and that he will guarantee transparent justice in Liberia. In most cases, some supporters of the winning political team may engage in witch hunt to seek revenge against opposition members, and or those who lost the election may seek revenge or start commotion to create political and social instability in the country because they felt the election was rigged. So it goes both ways. Those if you are a presidential candidate and you were victorious and you won the election, your duty now is to understand, first of all, after you've been declared the president-elect or the winner of the presidential election, your duty is to immediately talk to your supporters. Tell them, say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your support. Through your help, I'm now the president of Liberia, but I want you to understand that I'm not just the president of so and so party, but I'm now the president of the entire Republic of Liberia. So it's my responsibility to make sure that all Liberians are safe, that all Liberians receive justice, and that we all work together in peace and harmony. That's the responsibility of the winner of any presidential election in a country, in any country, not just Liberia. So that's the first thing that I want to stress, that the president must speak to his supporters to tell them to behave, because the presidency does not belong to the political party that fielded him in the election, but rather the presidency is the leadership position of the entire country. And all Liberians, whether they voted for you or they didn't vote for you, they are all your citizens, and you must give them equal rights and equal protection under the law. Then also those who contest in the election and don't win. If you don't win, that's where real citizenship, real patriotism comes into play, because you didn't win. So now it's your people will be very disappointed. They may be accusing the election commission of corruption, of rigging the elections, all kinds of things they'll be doing to cause confusion, so that there will be chaos. Instead of having peace for us to just move on to have a peaceful transition, now you have all these hostilities and civil unrest. So it's the responsibility of the opposition as well to speak to their citizens, to speak to their supporters and say, look, thank you so much for your support. We did all we could, but, and to be gentlemanly also to say, well, but irrespective of our efforts, our opponent, was victorious. And we want to openly congratulate our opponent and tell him, congratulations. He can rest assured of our cooperation. And I ask you, my supporters, to please give the new president all the support that he needs so that we can all work together to build our country. That's the responsibility of the opposition as well. I see that over the years and all of that, it's been very difficult, for opposition politicians who lose the election to concede to their opponents, and that is not good politics, because now you're saying, if it's not me, then nobody should be happy. If it's not me, then there should be no peace in Liberia. And we've been having a lot of this go on and on. Quite recently, I know of certain individuals that want to vie to be president, and they came up to me and told me, so, oh, Dr. Baba, I want to be president of Liberia, etc., etc. And the first thing that I asked them was, what are your platforms? Most of the time, politicians, Liberian politicians, don't present platforms to the people. A platform is a political, agenda that you may have. What is it that you want to do for the people when they elect you? A lot of times, the Liberian politicians just go by, who know you, or they're my tribal man and my this and that. And when it comes to the country, it comes to the peace and security of the country, ain't no trouble blessing business there. We're talking about the security and peace of the country for everybody, not for your tribe, not for your family, but for the entire nation. So we really got to understand this, and we got to do it better this time around, especially in 2023. And this is the reason why we are making the sacrifice. Not that we have the money to pay for airtime, to be talking to you and all of that, but to make sure that at least we will make our contribution in this life so that we don't have any kind of chaos or bloodshed after our election. After the election, we expect anybody who wins to speak to his supporters, to let them know that they don't have the right to act rude towards any citizen of the country, and those who lose the election to talk to their people, to let them know that, you know, they can try again, and that because they didn't win doesn't mean that other people should not be in peace. So we will be closely monitoring that, we'll be closely watching it, and we will make sure that those who try to attempt after they've lost, that attempt to create any kind of confusion, that we will bring them to light, we expose them so that people like you will know who's creating the chaos in the country and making all of us to suffer, because we're tired of suffering now. So hence, from the beginning of the electoral process to the post-election period, it is crucial, very crucial, that leaders of political parties and civic organizations work collaboratively to maintain peace, national unity, and security throughout Liberia. For this reason, it is very important that those who win elections ready themselves to negotiate with opposition politicians and their supporters to form an inclusive national government that would be representative of the citizens of Liberia, and to actively engage the electorate in forming a great future for the entire nation. So it's not just only that after I've won the election, then okay, it's okay, I can just only take only my supporters, only those who are members of my party, only my cousins and my relatives or my tribesmen and all of that. No, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. When you win the election, you know the other people's hearts are burning, the other people are very, you know, down. Lift them up, give them, you know, give them some encouragement. Call some of your opponents, you know, invite them to a meeting as president, you know, of the nation. Invite and say, look, I know in an election, you know, somebody just got to win, and even though I won, you know, but I want to offer you some positions in my government, so we can all work together so that your people, you know, can have some representation in the government. You know, so an inclusive government, it will be a better thing to do. But you, the winner of the election, you got to take that lead and stop being selfish. And then also your people should understand that it's a national thing. It's not a party thing. It's not a political party thing. So that, oh, it must be us. We didn't want, we voted for you and all of that. Now we ain't got no position, this and that. But you want peace in the country. You want peace in the country, you got to include other people in it too. On several occasions, civil unrests erupted in Liberia because those who emerged victorious in elections saw it as an opportunity to seek revenge. You're not there to seek revenge, to ostracize their political opponents, and sometimes to misuse state power and resources to suppress their opponents. You're not there to do that either, because you have access to the money now. You're grabbing people, you're doing this, you're doing that. The people want, the opposition wants to assemble, you tell them, say they cannot assemble, they cannot do that. When you start doing those kinds of things, you are violating the Constitution, because you're supposed to be running a civilian government under civilian law, civil law. So blocking other people or creating hurdles for those who don't support you, or not to even assemble and or to do what they want to do, that is peaceful and all of that, that is against the law. And I see sometimes those things are done, you know, very frequently in Liberia. They are unconstitutional. It may also involve members of the opposition seeking illegal and destructive alternatives to pay back and or to sabotage the economic and political agendas of the ruling party. We saw a lot of that going on too. 1985, those who didn't win the election, they decided to have an incursion from Sierra Leone. They feel cool that didn't take place in 1989. When you look again, they were coming from the African side, and that incursion today kind of destroyed the entire infrastructure of the country. So we don't want those kinds of things to happen. When elections are held and you have this satisfaction, all of that, there are or what's that procedures, legal procedures that you can follow to submit your grievances to the National Elections Commission and or to seek appeal, with the Supreme Court of Liberia. So those areas, those alternatives are things that we should take instead of taking arms, to create, instability in the country. It may also involve members of opposition seeking illegal and destructive alternatives to pay back and or to sabotage the economic political agendas of the ruling party. Evidently, this may greatly impact the development of the entire nation, and it may also impede economic progress. Additionally, sometimes these circumstances may result in mysterious deaths of opposition members, politicians. Above all, sabotaging the activities of an elected government because you are jealous of your opponent or sitting president is unconstitutional, illegal, and uncivil. So some of you, sometimes the things that you say in public, about the leader of the country, all those kinds of things there don't show good example of good political leaders. You must watch your language, the language you use, against the leader of the country. Watch your tactics that you try to apply, that they must be peaceful, not violent, or stop inciting people. Inciting people is not the best way for you to get your political agendas, accomplished. In view of the foregoing, it's necessary that Liberians learn to live together in peace. They must learn to appreciate diverse views and to respect and love themselves as they are. In addition, it is the constitutional right of each citizen to choose who he or she wants to lead them without being harassed, ostracized, or deprived of their rights and privileges as citizens of Liberia. Thus, the continued use of suppressive instead of peaceful means to rule the people may gradually lead to the political economic upheavals. Consequently, it may eventually cause the electorate to lose confidence in the ruling party and its leader. So, we must live together. That's number one. Two, we must respect each other, we must respect diverse views. Don't expect me to think the way you think or to say the things you do. If you are a praise singer and I'm not a praise singer, so be it. It's not a crime, So those are things that are creating the confusion in the country. You are mad at someone because they didn't vote for the person that you voted for. What makes you feel that the person doesn't have the right to be mad at you for not voting for the person that they like? So respect one another, respect one another's space, respect one another's opinions. It's good for us to have diverse opinions, but yet at the end of the day, agree on how we can work together, how we can compromise. We must be willing to negotiate. It's negotiation. It has to be done through negotiation. When two persons have opposing views, they will continue to be in opposition to each other until the two of them can realize that, oh, well, this thing not working. So why don't I meet this person halfway and they meet me halfway? And that's negotiation. Building consensus, building consensus is the best thing to do. And to give and take is even better, so that in that way, we have a win-win situation. Also, Those who serve as gatekeepers to the government must respect the wishes and aspirations of the Liberian people. Gatekeepers must look at the bigger picture in terms of putting Liberia first and ensuring that Liberia's human, natural, and mineral resources are wisely used in the best interest of the people of Liberia. So I'll give you an example of gatekeepers. Gatekeepers, when we say gatekeepers, we mean those people that are there by the president, that the president elects, appoints as members of his cabinet. The president appointed you a member of his cabinet because he has trust in you, because the president cannot know everybody in the country. But the president will be depending on you, that he's, appointing for you to represent him to the people, to talk to the people nicely, to include them, to encourage them to actively participate in the building of the nation, the building process of the nation. Not for you to isolate people because, oh, the man not a member of our party, or the man is not a member of my ethnic group, or he's not my family. You cannot do that. So when you do those kinds of things, you're not doing it only to the individual, but you are portraying a bad image of the president that appointed you. And many government officials have the tendency to misrepresent the president. President Weah didn't just become president of Liberia overnight. It took years. The young man worked hard. He did his best to promote himself and to promote the image of the country. And as he was doing that, people were watching him and admiring him for his talent and for what he was doing. So part of what he is enjoying today is something that he worked for. He strove hard to reach that stage in his own weak ways. He may not have all the education, all of that, but God saw all of that. He saw all of us that got all the big degrees and all of that. And he chose this young man who is even younger than I am, younger than many of us, that to become the president of the country. So, and we knew who he was, what his qualification was, and the people elected him. So when the people decide in whom the power is built, because this is democracy, so the majority of the people decided that they wanted him to become the president of Liberia. The majority rule may not, the decision of the majority may not always be the best decision. But for people like us who understand the situation, or people who are supposed to be quote unquote more educated than the president is, like current president is, you really wants to really be standing up, especially those that he appointed you guys so that you can really help him. Well, a lot of you are not helping him. You are disgracing him. You're making him to look bad, in the eyes of the public, because the public already knows who he is. He's not able to do it. But then those of you who are supposed to really deliver, you're not delivering. You got the rules and things that are very, very bad, in a place, but we have a public works ministry. So he's been there now for almost 6 years. So why the rules the way how they are? What's happening? And then, of course, also that we must look at it both ways, is that those who are appointed by the president, they are there to advise the president. But if the president does not listen to the advice of professional advice of the people, then there's nothing they can do too. So then they're in effect. So it's both ways, but in any case, it's important that gatekeepers, do what it's supposed to do. It's the sitting with the national legislature. 2000, I think 2000 what? 7 or 8 or whatever it is, the TRC report, was submitted. The recommendations were submitted to the national legislature. The national legislatures, the lawmakers are there to represent the people. The people send their recommendations that they want to establish a tribunal, a criminal war court, in Liberia. And the people that they elected are sitting on that document. They've been sitting on it now for I don't know how many years, you know, whether it's 10 years, 15 years or whatever. They've been sitting on that document, not doing anything, but yet they can pay themselves bonus is $30,000. They say $30,000 to do what? To sit down on a document that the people ask you to ratify so that it can be passed into law. And also when the executive, chief executive, including Mrs. Salif, when she was asked to see how she could help implement this, of course, you know, the decision that the people made also by electing people who are implicated in the troubles that we're going through in Liberia. Now we got a deadlock over the thing, but yet you paying yourself $30,000, you know, bonus for not doing what the people are asking you to do. So it's something that Liberians really need to understand what, you know, civic education is all about, and that through this awareness that you can take steps, you can definitely take steps. The representatives and the senators are elected by you. So if these people that you elected cannot honor your requests and all of that, you have a right not to vote them back into power. And we hope that you will use your power, your people power, you know, wisely during the 2023 elections that's going to be taking place. So gatekeepers must look at a bigger picture in terms of putting Liberia first and ensuring that Liberia's human, natural, and mineral resources are wisely used in the best interest of the people of Liberia. For an example, the ruling party must recruit qualified Liberian citizens to work in their government because of the skills and knowledge that person possesses, so that their contribution can bring added benefit not only to the administration of the ruling political party and its government, but to benefit the entire nation. Therefore, the recruitment process of government should not be based on party line, nepotism, or tribalism, but based on qualifications of the Liberian citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the conclusion of our discussion. So in conclusion, the executive branch of any democratic nation is very important. It is the nerve center of every democratic republic. Therefore, the president of the nation must be aware of what is happening in his government and the nation he rules. The president of the nation also has oversight responsibilities over the other branches of government and the nation. He is charged with the responsibility to coordinate various projects and resources to ensure they are used to benefit taxpayers. During political crises in Liberia, the president, members of his entourage, and supporters must collaborate with the citizens to build a wholesome, functioning society in which transparent justice and rule of law must prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this brings us to the end of this civic education program. I want to say thank you so much for listening. I also want to thank the members of Decanty Artists Theater, the Dati Peace Advocates in Liberia, the Dubois chapter, headed by Kenry Fayad Tamba, and the Benedru chapter, headed by Mishak Elliott. I want to say thank you to you and your teams. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And we thank all our sponsors, the members of our board of directors, including our board chairs in the United States, Mr. Timothy Gardner and Mrs. D. Shiba Brown in Liberia. I want to say thank you so much for everything, and goodbye for now. This has been your producer, director, and presenter, Dr. Joseph Tomungara Baba, executive director and founder of Decanty Artists Theater, saying goodbye for now. Bye-bye.